I can hear you for sure. How am I doing? I have a nice little thingy here. Can you hear me? I'm coming in real nice.
Yeah, look at you, like a radio voice and everything.
Yeah, the nice sultry tones from
Mm.
7 to midnight.
Oh,
Yourgo. There we go.
there you go. You can introduce some new kids on the block as well, right?
Oh yeah. New kids on the block. Ah.
Yo, welcome to My Summer Lair. I am your host, Sammy. I had to Google all these boy band song titles to make this introduction work. Younan. In this episode, I'm going to take you step by step to reveal how New Kids on the Block, get it, step by step, how New Kids on the Block ended up on MTV's Total Request Live one fateful day in 1999. By 1999, New Kids on the Block were no longer a cover girl, they were an 80s baby. You may not know this, but 80s Baby is another song from them. It's not as probably one of their bigger hits. And yet a chain letter was making the rounds insisting to bring back the time. Another minor New Kids on the Block hit. With me is the director, Yourgo Artsitas. Who's got it? The Right Stuff. His documentary screening at Hot Docs, Troll, New Kids on the Block, Total Request Live, and the chain letter that changed the internet reveals how fans and jokers and pranksters said to MTV, hey, how about New Kids on the Block? Let's try it again. Here's the thing. When a boy band comes on the scene, they're fresh like a Valentine girl. And fans swear to them, I'll be loving you, brackets, forever. Though, that's not always true. And even though it was tearing up my heart, MTV was all like, bye, 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 to the poorly named New Kids on the Block. They were gone, replaced with this new pop from NSYNC to Britney Spears to 98 Degrees to Christina. And yet this chain letter circulating online was driving MTV crazy. Let's all get together and pressure TRL to broadcast Hangin' Tough. Would MTV respect the pop culture democracy and play NKOTB? If you don't know or can't remember, it's all good. I've run out of boy band song titles now, so I'm going to speak properly. Total Request Live ran on MTV from September 14, 1998 to November 16, 2008. MTV VJs, mostly Carson Daly, you remember Carson Daly, and David Holmes would count down the top 10 music videos of the day with a studio audience. These top 10 music videos were all voted on by the fans. And it was a good thing going. The youth had skin in the game, and his fans could vote for their favorites from early Eminem to late 90s boy bands. The record labels and music industry was happy because TRL could crown new music kings and help sell records, and MTV was happy because they had a hit TV show. It was a good thing going. The only thing threatening this utopian pop culture music democracy was this popular chain letter that changed the internet, pushing readers to vote for New Kids on the Block on March 10, 1999. Play Hanging Tough. Because the final results would air the next day on March 11th, TRL episode. All of this is the subject of this documentary playing at Hot Docs, Troll, New Kids on the Block, Total Request Live, and the chain letter that changed the internet. This I promise you, oh boom, one final boy band song title. This I promise you is going to be a fun episode of My Summer Lair. Stephanie, why don't you play your pop music?
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
But I'll just get right into it unless you have anything to say.
Yeah, we're just gonna have a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. But yeah, otherwise, I'm just ready to go. I'm geared up. Let's do it, Sammy. I'm excited you watched the thing. That's fun.
Yeah, it was one of the highlights of because you know when they announced like the Hot Docs listings, the documentaries, right? You're like looking through the things, and sure, there are like documentaries on like world events and like people living in like crisis and things like that. I was like, whoa, New Kids on the Block and a chain letter. I circled that one immediately, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb when you see like the rest of the programming. A lot of it's like much more important, and this is the dumbest investigative journalism you could possibly fathom.
So before we investigate your dumb investigative journalism, I want to back up for a second. I know you have been also submitting other than hot docs, like you've been submitting Troll. The actual documentary is called Troll, New Kids on the Block, Total Request Live, and the Chain Letter That Changed the Internet. But before we unpack that documentary, like, have you been watching any of the NBA playoffs? I know it just started.
Of course, yeah. I'm a big sports guy. I was a sports reporter for a decade.
Are you still like cheering New Orleans? They kind of almost had it, game one against the Thunder. There was about 3 or 4 chances at the end there in the last minute that were heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's well, one of my favorite things I like to tell anybody on planet Earth is that I used to be a Golden State Warriors fan, grew up in the Bay Area, love all those teams. And then I moved to New Orleans, and the year that DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis were going to have like a full year together, I bought season tickets, and I want you to guess how much the season tickets were. I bought them in person.
New Orleans.
I bought one ticket, the cheapest ticket you get. I bought one ticket for an entire 41 games and one preseason game.
500? I'm not going to guess 1,000. I'm going to guess under 1,000, but 500, 700?
Including fees, it was $209.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts? So I became a season ticket holder, and it's totally a different world when you're a season ticket holder. And Golden State didn't really look like the Golden State I grew up rooting for. And then Zion Williamson came, and he's a very exciting player, though it's been quite tough since. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to watch the entire series and excited to get very disappointed when Zion says he might come back but doesn't come back.
Yeah, he's gonna be an interesting fellow. I don't know if he's necessarily like he never really says enough, at least from what I gather. Like, I don't get a lot of New Orleans scuttlebutt, right?
Out of him?
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's hard. It's that thing of like, I'm in Toronto, so I get a lot of like Lakers, Golden State, like a whole bunch of other teams. It's the same thing with the Hornets. I never hear anything about the Hornets.
Yes. Well, there's like a big piece that The Ringer did a long time ago about the fact that there's just very little people devoted to New Orleans and the beat. And the people that are on there's like some really, really good beat writers. But yeah, it's really hard to go national. ESPN had a Zion reporter. I think his name's Andrew Lopez. And just this year, they're like, we're splitting time. I'm doing San Antonio too. So it's like hard to get anybody to be interested in the New Orleans Pelicans unless you live there. And then during the playoffs, it becomes a madhouse.
I bring up the NBA, because you're a sports fan and the playoffs are fun, but also I find that the NBA, more than any other league, is laced with conspiracies, right? There's always rumors about they're starting these playoff times for this team to like make it rough for them, or there's refs making certain calls, or the league wants the Lakers to win or the Raptors to lose, or whatever those conspiracies. Do you find that the NBA has a lot of those kind of conspiracies more than, say, NFL or MLB?
Well, I think it's just a cultural thing that like because of Tim Donaghy, there is reason to have conspiracy. You know what I mean? Like, I bet you in 1940s, people thought baseball was rigged too because of the Black Sox scandal. You know, and people have been talking about boxing being rigged for years. There's a whole thing I think on Freakonomics about how sumo is literally rigged. But yeah, 20 years ago, Tim Donaghy reffed a game and then found out that he was gambling in some way on the game. And since then, I mean, I think that there's reasonable reason to there's not like reasonable conspiracies, but there's like reason to believe in a conspiracy after literally somebody made Shaq get his second ring or whatever.
And that's the fun thing. I think in your documentary touches upon it too, as we're getting into your work now. Like, sometimes a conspiracy is true. It's not always just like a shadowy government or like the mafia killed JFK or something outlandish. Sometimes there's a kernel of truth in the conspiracy.
Yeah, but see, what's funny is like, it's like, I think the most interesting thing about the doc is that it kind of shows why it was a practical reason to keep the conspiracy going. And the fact that they were it wasn't a full democracy over a Total Request Live. And it was kind of them using it as a factor, but not the full factor, not counting every vote. And, you know, and I think the coolest thing is, one, people who were like, oh, that whole thing's rigged, they just are bought and paid for by the labels or whatever. That's kind of true. But I think the more interesting thing is how the confluence of events led it to such where this would happen. You know what I mean? Where they're like, oh no, people are calling us on it and it's actually working. Let's find a way to keep the ruse up.
So let's unpack that a little bit, because in Canada we didn't get MTV and we didn't get Total Request Live. So I know your documentary is showing at Hot Docs and it's going to be a mainly Canadian audience. We had Much Music, so we had Much on Demand and similar things like that. But TRL, as this kind of like cultural phenomenon, was mostly absent from our like growing up in the 80s or in the 90s. Obviously, all the music was here and huge. Like everybody listened to Backstreet Boys and like NSYNC and all that kind of stuff. All the Canadian girls were just as much screaming as the American girls. But TRL was absent from our cultural makeup. So just give people a snapshot of what Total Request Live was.
Total Request Live was a show that lasted from 1998 to 2008, and it was geared around children. At 3:30, kids would get out of school, head over to their house, pull out a Go-Gurt, and just watch the top 10 videos of the day. And this happened Monday through Friday. It is the show that gave Carson Daly a career, kind of broke him out, who now he's a massive star and is on, I believe, the Today Show. And it was just a perfect place for kids to get stuff that they liked and for kids to enjoy. Like, it's not Headbangers Ball, that's programming to a different thing. Total Request Live is to program to kids who have braces and acne and are upset about, their social studies grade. And so they fed off on that, and every single day, to kind of allow these kids to feel like they had like skin in the game, they would allow them to vote. And you could either vote on the phone, where there'd be up to like 25 options where you could vote, press this for that, press this for Christina Aguilera's Come On Over, press this for Britney Spears Someday, whatever. And then you could also go online and vote online. And on the online voting, there was also an opportunity for you to go other and write in your own candidate.
And this is 1998, right? So the internet had just basically started. Everyone was still like on Hotmail or AOL Mail, like.
Oh yeah, AOL. I don't even know if Hotmail existed. It was 99. So the actual event was May 11th, 1999. You were implored to vote on March 10th. Did I say May? I said March 11th, 1999. Yeah. Everybody was implored to vote on March 10th because it would go for the next day, for March 11th. And it was like a couple weeks before The Matrix premiered, and the show was kind of in its infancy, but it was starting to pop. It started becoming this burgeoning thing in the zeitgeist. It started in September 98, and by spring of 99 had become an actual thing that was a really viable marketing tool for a lot of labels and for the music industry as a whole.
And so before this impetus to vote for New Kids on the Block, like you said, TRL was an opportunity for kids to have skin in the game. Did people really buy into the illusion? You could vote and you could put Britney Spears as number one and you could change, quote unquote, her destiny.
Yeah. I mean, I think people definitely did buy into it. I know it's very commonplace for now for people to be like, oh yeah, obviously, come on, what are you talking about? But kids have time, and kids have a lot of time to do stuff that feels just frivolous and stupid. And so they would sit there and vote. Now, granted, there was a lot of different variables involved. Like I lived in the West Coast, so I would get home, and it would be like on pre-record, and it would be hard for me to vote without like missing school. I remember every time I would call, it'd be not for what I want. But yeah, I mean, like kids voted for sure, and I think it was very, very obvious to them who was going to be the number one and number two and number three, or at least the number one and number two, because it was always just kids throwing their back behind NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. And I think they could prove that. You know what I mean? Like they could show, because they got data from those phone calls. The bigger thing is that you just couldn't, other than putting in that other on TRL, is very difficult to just have something out of the wilderness become a video.
Yeah, so then where did the record labels end and where did MTV begin then, right? Because they're kind of actively all pushing this like boy band, and this was a big thing, even though at the time there was like Eminem and Kid Rock and other like Offspring was floating around as well. So like, was this all like one long just like supply chain to get to the kids, like one long commercial, or was it always just like just strange bedfellows, I guess?
No, and what's very important is that it is not as mischievous and bad as like it's just a complete conspiracy and there's a cabal of people trying to dominate everything and control it to a micromanaging level. I think they really tried to program a very diverse show because, like you said, like Eminem breaks out on that show, Tupac is on that show. I looked it up. The Phantom Menace had the Fate of the Duels or whatever by like John Williams. That was on the show for 11 days. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different kind of things making the show. Just by the time you get to the turn of the century, it becomes like a huge moneymaker where they have to spend a little bit more time really curating and making sure that the votes align, but also you got to program the hour because if you're trying to attract, 11 to 14-year-old kids, if you see a video that's like, from 1970, not 1972, but like a weird
Bay City
maybe
Rollers.
Annie Lennox walking. What was that?
Bay City Rollers.
Well, yeah, that. Or you program Pac-Man Fever, or you program Annie Lennox walking on broken glass, where all of the sensibilities are of a certain time. I think that would alienate their audience. So, speaking to them, they took a lot of pride in diversifying the countdown and having your Limp Bizkits, your Kid Rocks, along with your M&Ms, along with your PODs and Blink 182s. And then always, it felt like every single day it was Backstreet Boys or NSYNC at number one.
So this was organic too. This is what I was getting at, right? Like I wanted to know where the conspiracy kind of started and ended, right? So there was a organic component to this where people were discovering this music and then like supporting it accordingly.
Yes, certainly. Like it's like there are elements of organic there, but if it got to be how is it? What they would do is what I call cultural gerrymandering, right? So they wouldn't just be like, "Hey, here you go." And honestly, the U.S. Never mind. But like,
You can finish the thought.
Okay,
like,
so I don't want to talk about politics. It's whatever. Let's talk about the judicial branch, the legislative, and the executive.
How a bill becomes a law.
Let's just put this to a screeching halt. There's what they would do is they weighed the phone voting a lot higher than any other kind of voting. They had the opportunity to select what videos were going to be chosen. So it's like gerrymandering who they'd want. So they'd like an example I got was they'd be like, "Hey, we're not getting," because they would get very good data on who was voting on those phone lines. So they'd find out, "Hey, the South isn't really crushing it. Like they're not really watching us as much. So why don't we put in up at a high level like a Jessica Simpson or something like that, who people can identify with," and that would lead to, obviously, it's not necessarily like them telling them, but it's like, "Hey, Jessica Simpson is an option. You can get it. It's right there in front." And through that would kind of be able to cajole the list that they kind of wanted. To have them just be like picking like the thing like that, I don't think is accurate.
The chain letter part is in your title. It's the chain letter that changed the internet. So as we're talking about like this thing about the organic and the conspiracy, this is kind of an organic movement, I guess, this chain letter. So do you want to explain, like, first of all, who wrote the chain letter?
The person who wrote the chain letter, and I don't know if this is actually the person's name. I've spent months and months trying to identify it and a whole bunch of weird out of the blue Facebook messages that people are like, "What?" Is a guy named James Vaughn. But I think that dude's pseudonym, because pseudonyms were very, very popular back then. We were at the beginning of kind of weird avatars and screen names and whatever. And he just wanted to do it just as an insult to pop culture, just as a way to thumb the nose at. Essentially, he wanted to yuck the yum of a whole bunch of tweens and just be like, "Oh, okay. I remember back in my day when we were watching real cool stuff, like Van Halen and whatever, Def Leppard," which is like kind of par for the course. It's kind of weird to think about now, but for 2 decades, 3 decades, people would watch MTV as a teenager, and then when they got into their 20s and 30s, would immediately be like, "Oh my gosh, MTV is not the same as it used to be. I hate it. I hate what MTV has become." And that would just happen as generations went through. Once every 5 years or so, they would do that. And this is that iteration of people who are upset that, it used to just be Real World. Now it's Real World and Road Rules. It's all reality television. Where's my music? It's that kind of animus towards a nostalgic television station.
Simpsons, same thing. Like Simpsons been around long enough. Well, yeah, where there's enough generations where like these are the cool seasons,
Oh,
these are
yeah.
the terrible seasons, right? And like, and then the kids kind of go.
I comp it more to Saturday Night Live. I'm not a very big Simpsons fan, but Saturday Night Live, it feels like whenever you grew up through it, like whenever you're like learning from like 15 to 22 about comedy, you really love it. So like my cast is like Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, and all those folks, and Kirsten Wiig and all that, and I like really cherish them, and I think that is the pinnacle. But if you ask other people, it's Bill Murray and it's whatever. If you ask other people, it's Belushi. If you ask other people, it's Carvey and Myers and all those people. And I think that's the kind of thing of just like people don't recognize that what they're after is nostalgia, not how a cable television station is programming.
Yeah, but it's also just the evolution of these things, right? Because like they're not going to necessarily shut down MTV. It's kind of still floating around, right? Even though it's lost a lot of its appeal and popularity, but it's still floating around. And it's the same thing with Saturday Night Live. It goes through those iterations, right? Where like it loses its cool or prominence or whatever word you want to use, but it's always there. They're just institutions.
Yeah, I mean, I would quibble with MTV. MTV is like very much one show now. It's very, very ridiculousness. But I think and I'm actually like, this is a revelation to me, is that the reason why these shows are so like important to people at a time is because they reflect that time. They are live shows that are pulling everything from that exact time to get it through, whether it's a joke or the vernacular that they use, or just like their vibe, their clothing. All of that is of a time because it is a live show that's created, whether it's that day or through the week with Saturday Night Live. And I think you see a lot of that where people look back and they think the content of the show or what you're seeing is in some way replicable, but the whole thing is the vibe and the era that it is showcasing. And that's why people look back so fondly when honestly it's inimitable. You couldn't recreate it if you wanted to.
Is your documentary a subtle like observation or maybe even commentary on the impact of television as well? Because people were excited to, like, the regular fans were on the show as well, like for brief moments. So
yeah,
and like we've seen like in NBA games when people are on the jumbotron, they get splashed up there for 5 seconds and they lose it and they start dancing and grooving or doing something, right? And like you can go live on IG right now or on YouTube or anything else like TikTok. You don't have to be like relegated to the jumbotron at an NBA game.
yeah. There's an element of that, of like people who just want to be on TV. And it is like a thing of a bygone era of being like, hey, I want to just see myself on TV because that's exciting and thrilling for a second. And now, I mean, we have so much camera saturation that doesn't really exist. So yeah, there is a little bit of that. But I think what the doc is trying to do is a little bit more of getting back to a real like vibe and feel and aesthetic of an exact point of time on the internet and digitally and like all the browsers and all that kind of stuff, really trying to hone in on that as opposed to what cable television was like.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of the ICQ sounds, which is great in the documentary as the chain letter is going back and forth. So we just touched upon it a little bit, but I know we went down a tangent, but just explain the chain letter and what it was basically asking people to do for a specific date.
Yes. So there was a chain letter that went around. If you guys don't know what a chain letter is, a chain letter was this thing that happened. It used to be physical mail that you'd have to forward, but then really caught fire early during the internet. And whenever you'd get one, it would be like forward this to your mom or else she'll die.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. And it would be a whole bunch of emoticons that like kind of looked scary, like a serial killer's note. And you'd be like, all right, well, I'm superstitious, so you picked the right person. But essentially what happened is it went from just this kind of chain on emails, started making it onto message boards. And the content of it was just like, hey, I don't know if you guys have seen TRL, but I hate it. I'm pretty sure you guys hate it too. Let's thumb our nose in this idea of meritocracy and a pure democracy. And let's insult the Total Request Live countdown by putting in a video that would just stick out like a sore thumb. And what they chose was a video from roughly a decade before, Hangin' Tough by New Kids on the Block. And they thought, or James Vaughn, if that's his name, decided that would be the ultimate insult to popular culture, is to have a older boy band be amongst the new exciting Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, and NSYNC.
This continues our discussion on Saturday Night Live, where like New Kids on the Block were basically like the Adam Sandler era or something of Saturday Night Live, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like an older era.
Yeah,
Like,
they would be, I guess,
or I guess a
they would
Belushi or
technically be. I'm a huge SNL guy.
Mhm.
Like I read that oral history, which is like 600 pages. Read Jay Moore has a book on it. Watched the James Franco documentary. Big SNL guy. If you're doing comp of like time period, I guess 88 would be specifically Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman were like the big guys of that era. And then Sandler and Farley and David Spade and all that, they came around about 92. But that's me being an encyclopedic nerd about.
Well, that's good nerding because that gives us like a hook because it's like that's what they're basically saying, right? Like you would be tuning in that week in like what is it, 98, 99, and you're like asking them to put on like Dana Carvey again, right? When he's like he's not there, like dude, Church Lady, like what happened to Church Lady? Is basically what you're saying.
Exactly.
That's what the chain letter's asking for, Church Lady.
Honestly, it was not even Church Lady. It's more like, hey, do your George H.W. Bush impression.
Yeah.
You know, right now, why don't you just throw us this? And then there's 11-year-old kids being like, who is this old guy? He looks like this guy who's running for president next year. Like, yeah, it would be like not even Ross Perot, because Ross Perot was 92. But yeah, it would be like some kind of because I was that kid. I was like a 9-year-old who would watch the show every day after school. And I watched it and I was so excited. I was like, oh man, it could be anything. It could be Michael Jackson. It could be Tupac is still alive and he's doing a song with Elvis. It could have been anything, right? And then I watched it and I was like, I don't even get the joke. Like, I don't even know who these folks are.
Yeah.
And in the reaction in the room of TRL, you could see the same thing where everybody's like, oh, it could be anything, you know, it could like, Celine Dion could have a remix of My Heart Will Go On with, Old Dirty Bastard or something. And nothing.
Yeah. So Dave Holmes was the VJ for this episode for when they started putting the pressure on to air New Kids on the Block. As you said, Carson Daly was the main host, but Dave Holmes was filling in that day. And he says on the episode, this is a direct quote, "We're not sure what happened. It looks like you people just mobilized and put somebody on the countdown that has never been on the countdown before." So he was already like teasing it. It was already a bit of surprise. So as this chain letter goes around and they start putting pressure on MTV to put New Kids on the Block, this is where the conspiracy starts to, I guess, reveal itself or unravel. Is that the right word?
Well, so this is the story that I have of like how they decided to choose where they put it. Because the question was whether or not they should pay attention to it or not is like a different than where they would land it. So there was a couple of young people behind the scenes who were paying attention to this message board and it was getting around to them. And they saw it start to really, really creep up. And the online poll counting, which was like public, you could see that tick, 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 tick up. And other was up above like 60%, right? So it became a discussion of, do we pay attention to this or not? And in those message boards, people were saying, hey, why are we even doing this? We all know it's rigged and we'll know it's rigged after this because they clearly were voting for it and all this stuff. So a younger executive or a younger person behind the scene goes up to a higher executive and just goes, we need to do this or else people are going to think everything is fake. And we're not being that honest about it. So we have to at least give them something. It's not fun to feed the trolls or whatever you'd even call it. I don't even think the word troll was in this context in 1999. Right. So they're like, okay, we have to do something. So it becomes a discussion on the day of, like, where do we land it? And it becomes this weird thing of what should we do? Do we put it at number 10 and just kind of get it over with? Ha ha. But no, because MTV, as very talented programmers, they're like, hey, actually, why don't we put it at number 2? Tease it the entire time, tease it 6 times throughout the show so people will stick around. And then we have 50-ish minutes of people rating minute by minute, which are so crucial, especially back then. And then boom, they get number 2. They get to see their video on the countdown, but they also don't get to win. So it's kind of like everybody wins in this situation. They get to say that they did it and that somehow by their democracy, number 2 was actually legit, which is funny. In the doc, the graphic shows like how many phone call percentage they got, percentage of the phone vote.
This is interesting.
And then I have the dude just being like, that was not a real thing. There's no way we had him on the phones. It's possible.
Right. The technology and things weren't there at that time to like properly count or even put it other, like you said, right?
Yeah. Well, no, the technology was there for them because they had a third party phone thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they could just be like, oh, you press 3. Okay. That gets cataloged data, goes into a fax for the next morning. Right. Yeah. So that was legit. The phone stuff was very easy to keep count of. The online stuff was a little bit more, we'll just kind of get a vibe for it. And then when you have something like other as the winner, you kind of have plausible deniability to be like, I don't know, maybe it's 10% is this, 10% that, 10% this, and we don't know. But because of the chatter on the message boards, you can kind of see people being like, I'm telling you, they're not going to do it. They're all in the pockets of the labels. And they made a very strategic, pragmatic choice to put them on 2, so you'd watch all the way through, but don't let them win.
Is that MTV trolling the trolls, I guess, by putting it at 2?
I think it's a little bit of it is a little bit of a wink, and I guess you could say a troll, but it's I think with a troll you need to know the background, and it's 25 years later, and we're finally getting the answer to that. You know what I mean?
So
like it's like,
yeah. So what has attracted you to this story? Like you spend like time investigating this and like looking up who wrote the chain letter, and like you said, you're reaching out to people on like Facebook and like, did you write this? So what attracted you to this story?
I have a long journalism background, and I've always wanted to get into filmmaking, and I had just remembered this. And then one day I was out like at dinner and talked about it and was like, hey, do you remember that? And the person I was with was like, no. And I was like, you don't know nothing. How do you not remember this? How did you not catalog this stupid thing from when you were 9? So I went home and I looked it up. And there's this website or this web page, which is kind of like a press release about it afterwards, where it's like fans kick New Kids on the Block on the thing. And I looked it up and I was like, okay, let me do some investigating. Let me look what's going on. And I reverse search for the quote of the chain letter that they have in that press release, and I can't find it anywhere. Like it's nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just search in New Kids on the Block, TRL, blah, 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 chain letter, and chainletter.net or whatever has a copy of the chain letter. And so then I take that chain letter and I copy it, a whole bunch of it, put it in quotes, and then look, and that chain letter is everywhere. And the other original like little snippet is nowhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's a lot more going on here than I had initially thought. There's like a weird putting it under the rug of the actual intent and motivation behind it, or at least at the beginning. I'm sure towards the end when this thing was going to every single message board, I'm sure there was also some New Kids fans who were like, hey, why not? I'll jump in.
This is Watergate almost, right? Like it's just not an ordinary break-in anymore.
No. It's like, it's weird to see
like you're doing all the president's
like
men.
This.
Like,
no, it is wild that they were trying to to keep it on the low, all this kind of stuff that they were doing. But it's for the dumbest thing ever. You know what I mean? Like it's just so doesn't matter. Like it's like, oh, okay, for one day, corn was 3 again instead of number 2. You know what I mean? Like it's not, and everybody who won, the people who watched it got to see New Kids on the Block and say, hey, I did that, which is funny because they're essentially getting the thrill that every 11 to 15-year-old gets by voting the day before. You know, they're like seeing the value of it, being like, I voted for that. No, it's on my no. It's like, oh yeah, well, 11-year-olds have been doing this for 6 months.
yeah.
Like, and yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a very silly moment, and I don't think that there's necessarily. It's just not as nefarious as it comes off. Like the actual story, like looks bad, but it's not. Whatever. It's an interesting story from 25 years ago about one single day, and while it feels super conspiratorial, and I suppose it kind of is, and there was a little bit of collusion, it's not necessarily. It's what it becomes is a harbinger of people on the internet believing that they can come together in a populistic way and really do something to the system, right? And for my money, I think this is the best examples of the internet coming together. Like I understand that there's like better ways, and you can all come together and you vote for something, or you vote for something that matters, or you come together and you raise money for something.
We can help people.
That's all very important, and that's great. But I like when people do stuff for the greater goof, and that it's just all being silly, and we all can kind of subvert things together.
But as you're saying though, like it's not necessarily nefarious. Like it doesn't like, you know, I use the example of Watergate. Like it doesn't sour you on TRL or New Kids or any of that music. Like you're like, okay, it almost makes it more endearing in a weird way.
Yeah, I think it's just not blowing it up like you would assume. You know, like it's like
It's not a deal
people. I think
breaker.
it's important. No, but this is the whole thing. It's like all about like a vibe. It's just it's a time capsule of a certain time and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And TRL really, really wanted to maintain that and make sure that everything's very current and very trendy, and to put up guardrails to make sure that old songs didn't get in and kind of ruin that thing is for the best. Because I would hate if I look back in TRL and it's just this weird thing of like, hey, who did 4chan decide to vote on every single day? You know what I mean? Like that would be not that much fun. The fact that we get this and it is such a big part of my cultural upbringing and I would watch it every single day and it means so much. Like if you did a period piece of the early 2000s in New York, it would be weird if you didn't really have TRL as a part of it, or if you were doing like, it depends, I don't know, but like it is of a time and of an era, and it is like a linchpin in that whole era. And yeah, I get their motivations. They want to keep everything current. They want it to be pop music, and what is the best music right now for a certain age group, maybe, but not necessarily full Radio Disney. Like they had a band called Blue Orgy on the episode I was watching. You know, like it wasn't like they were blurring out bad words or whatever.
Slim Shady too.
Yeah, Slim Shady has a whole bunch. I mean, they would cut out curse words or whatever, but you know what I mean. Like if there's enough, what was it called? Bugging, not the fly in the ointment. Oh, there's some kind of idiom that I can't think of right now. But if there was just enough of this stuff littered throughout TRL, it would kind of ruin the thing.
So in the mid 70s, the FCC started to regulate advertising to children, right? You couldn't show like cigarette smoking and things like that. That's where it all started to happen. So, but in response, what studios and toy companies started to do was then they made the actual show the commercial. So that's where we got a lot of He-Man cartoons and G.I. Joe cartoons and stuff like that. And they were just basically 20 or 24-minute cartoons that were full advertisement for the toys, right? Like,
yeah.
But
yeah,
when you're a kid, you're watching, you're like, oh, He-Man's amazing and G.I. Joe's amazing. Like My Little Pony's amazing. You don't think about the corporate nefariousness that's going on. But as you get older and you find out like those were just basically like 20-minute commercials just aimed at children. That's how they got around that rule from the FCC. But at the same time, it doesn't ruin it. Like, you still like He-Man, you still like G.I. Joe and My Little Pony. Like, you can still enjoy it, even though now you have a better, broader sense of what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just promotion. It's smart promotion. And I think that's the whole thing about MTV from way back and when it started, was that it was just tremendous exposure for the artists. But when you're trying to program an entire day of television, you need to segment it to what kind of demographics are playing it. So while late at night, you might want to have a headbangers ball where it could be like, you know, older people watching a little bit more metal music. And then in the beginning of the day, who's going to be watching it from like 3:30 to 5? You know, it's going to be kids. So you just figure out a way to give them the programming they want. And then a whole bunch of people that I spoke to took a lot of pride in within that programming responsibility, getting some really interesting acts on there and being able to break some acts that wouldn't be able to. And they're very, very proud of that. Like very, very proud of being able to have some acts that would have been overlooked otherwise.
Did you vote?
Like I said earlier,
Yeah.
I tried to vote, but I was on the West Coast, so it was always very weird. It was always like I would get there and they'd say, "Hey, vote," but then the "Hey, vote" that you call and it would be off, but you'd have to call. It was just,
Yeah.
it was very cumbersome.
Which side of the house would you be voting for? The Korn Offspring side of the house, or the Backstreet Boys and Sync, Britney Spears side of the house?
I was very much beginning pop. So like Britney Spears, not NSYNC or Backstreet Boys, but like Britney Spears a lot. Maybe a little Ricky Martin, Livin' La Vida Loca.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then I aged into aged into a little bit more Spencer's Gifsey kind of bands like Sum 41 and like Alien Ant Farm and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I turned like 16 and I was too old to watch it. Like it's but by then, Fall Out Boy. There was a era of TRL where it was all boy bands up until like 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Fall Out Boy and Simple Plan and all these other kind of like pop punky bands start really, really doing really well. And Good Charlotte, and those are a lot of fun. Those are fun bands and accessible to kids as well.
Yeah, Panic at the Disco, My Chemical Romance. There was like a whole pile of them.
I remember, My Chemical Romance for sure. They were very good. They were very good for kids too, because they're very cartoony,
Yes,
and they seem, especially if you're like, Mom and Dad, they suck. I want to watch this kind of fun gothic song, like what is it, Black Parade?
Mm-hmm. Welcome to the Black Parade. Yeah, that was the big one. Yeah, but edgy enough still. Like they had eyeliner and things like that, right? So it wasn't like suburban safe. Like it was just a little bit threatening for the parents, but still safe.
Yeah, I mean, also My Chemical Romance like rocks. Like Welcome to the Black Parade is very, very good. I'm Not Okay is very good. Helena is very good, and they're like good songs. And if you're a snob, I could see people not liking them, but they've held the test of time. Like I'm pretty proud of myself. Like Sum 41 Fat Lip holds up. It's still a good song.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Alien Ant Farm's Smooth Criminal just got like its next like rerun. Like it just kind of like boomerang back for a couple days and started trending.
Yeah. Like, I'm hearing it more and more.
A lot of those songs were good.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of those songs are good. It's just older people were just hating on it because it's like, oh, come on, it's not Peter Frampton. I don't want to listen to it. Like, oh, come on. Back in my days, they'd play real instruments, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Music was always a weird thing, especially before the Spotify days, where like you would grow up and you'd be current. You'd be listening to whatever was in like your era, whether it was Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, or like you said, Sum 41 or whatever. It took a while to go back and like listen to like a Led Zeppelin or something like that. Like you didn't have as much access to that music. So if you didn't have an older brother or older sister, you were limited to mainly what you can get on the radio, what your friends had.
Yeah, what you were talking about was like the access you had because it was all physical media.
Yeah, because it was like harder for you to go back. So like that era is so locked up emotionally because that's all you were basically consuming. It wasn't like you had a lot of access to like Led Zeppelin or some older bands or anything like that to go back to or like listen to. So you were just surrounded by boy bands or whatever it is you were listening to, like My Chemical Romance and like Fat Lip and all that. Like that's what you had growing up, and so that's what you were like saturated in.
Yeah, well, I mean, and also like whatever your parents had on vinyl, like so like my parents were Parrot heads, so I listened to a lot of Jimmy Buffett, like that kind of stuff. But also that's like another thing that TRL did very well is that because you're younger, you do not have access to money and you don't have access to those physical copies of media or whatever. So the only way that you could watch or hear your favorite songs and your favorite artists is by tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to ensure that is by voting. And so it was just this whole cycle where it all leads back to just getting to TRL because the only way that you're going to be able to watch, a Britney Spears or a Stacey, a Rico, or, whatever it may be, is by voting, then watching the next day.
Yeah, this is all, again, pre-social media, so there was no way for you to connect with Britney Spears or anybody else.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if I DM'd Britney Spears, she wouldn't be like, "Hey, what's going on?" But she.
But that's the illusion too, though, right? It's a similar illusion, right? That you can kind of, like, you know what I mean? Like when she posts a photo, or whatever, and like, "Oh, your outfit is so pretty." Like people post those things all the time, and they hope that it gets through like the ether.
Well, no, but what's funny is that, and there's a similar thing, is that like that documentary came out on Britney Spears about like Free Britney. And then there became a huge groundswell on the internet of people saying "Free Britney, Free Britney, Free Britney." They start showing up outside of her court cases with signs and stuff, right? And so this groundswell, this like starts really growing into a thing where she starts like starting to appeal for getting rid of her conservatorship, and you can kind of see like one person just trying to throw a DM her way might not make it, but if you get all these people together, you can really make a difference.
That's a really positive message for the kids. So, as we're wrapping up, then, now that you've shared the story and you put it onto a documentary and you made it and you investigated it, like, what's your primary emotion? Is it relief? Is it joy? Like, you've put this thing on the record now. Like you said, you were having a hard time finding it on Google and everything like that. Now it's officially on the record, and there's a documentary on it. Like, so what's your primary emotion?
About finishing the thing and having it go out? I'm remarkably proud. I spent a long time on this, and it was very oddly personal thing. My father passed away a couple months ago, and he watched it right before he passed away. So that was
I'm
a lot of
sorry.
fun. And no, it's okay. But it's very cool because I had a specific vision for how this should look, and it is 100% what I wanted it to look like. And I'd like talk to people, and they're like, I don't know if it's going to look good. That might look a little rote or whatever. And I'm like, I'm telling you, if you put people in their childhood desktops, it's going to be really, really cool. And people are going to really have an emotional feeling to it, as opposed to just some facsimile that you can do and not spend that much time on. I mean, I spent like days combining all these different images and thousands of different just pieces of stuff, because there's no like screenshots of those AOL things. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't screenshot in 1999, and you certainly can't do it on a browser the same way. It's a whole different mechanism. So just like being able to combine all these different elements and getting it to look as accurate as humanly possible of like what an operating system would look like at the turn of the century. Seeing it on a big screen is great. Now, granted, like, I'm sure any filmmaker would say this, when you watch it for the first couple of times, you're like, should have done that. That should have been that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a missing there, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like in the middle, you're like, should I text the person right now to edit it? And can we get it into the next screen? And that's not fun, that kind of anxiety. But people are watching it. It's very interesting to watch people in like theaters all together laugh at things that I would hope they laugh at. And yeah, I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of documentaries out there that are very, very serious, and like it feels like there's like a lot of like it's either true crime or cult, you know, or a combination or two. And I really lean into funny, quirky, but like funny. You know, like, is like quirky is kind of like, oh, this is just a little bit weird. Like funny comedy kind of stuff where there's like actual jokes and you can kind of giggle at the absurdity of it instead of like making it to be this existential issue, which very much this documentary could have been, of like, it has turned into trolling, and now look at trolling people are doing, you know, they're harassing people online 24/7 and blah, blah, blah. And I would just like to be like, why can't we get back to what it used to be? Like, literally over the last 25 years, the definition of trolling has changed from just trying to get somebody's attention to like flame trolling. You talk to somebody in a negative way. And I think it's nice to see the idealized version of when the internet comes together and what they're able to do for the dumbest reason possible.
Like send Pitbull to Alaska for a Walmart concert.
Oh man, there's so many examples of that too. And what's crazy is I wish there was a word for it, because there's just not a word for it. You know how like I think they're called consumer eponyms, where like it's not a tissue, it's a Kleenex, or it's not a bandage, it's a Band-Aid.
Xerox.
Yeah, and if you see like a certain dystopian tech thing, you call it a Black Mirror. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wish that there was a term for what a Bodie McBoatface was. And most people just say, oh, it's like Bodie McBoatface.
Yeah.
But it's like, I wish that there was something, because I have like literally spent years studying these phenomena, and they're very fascinating. And they're something that we should aspire to.
Can we expect a sequel of some kind? Like, now that you've got this documentary under your belt, are you going to like explore more of these Bodie McBoatface things, I guess, for whatever they're called?
So I did all this stuff with COVID, and was kind of along that line of like doing a whole bunch of different stuff. And I want to do that. So I want this to be a part of an anthology of a whole bunch of different things. And I think that would be very, very cool. Because getting like the full story on some of these would be fascinating. And I think that I've like set out a rubric for how to visually tell it. There's just a whole bunch of different ways to tell it. And I think that's what I'm trying to develop right now. And we're hoping that works. But if not, I'm excited for other kind of weird Snapple cap things I can investigate.
because culture is so personal and because we're so immersed in it, we don't realize how much we've lived through.
Oh yeah.
To go back to Saturday Night Live, like when Church Lady and Mike Myers was doing like all his characters and stuff like that, you're just watching it and you're enjoying it. You don't realize that it's culture. You don't realize like Chris Farley, I live in a van down by the river, is going to be a thing that people are going to still say like 20, 30 years later.
Oh yeah. I mean, my thing after doing all this is to try to get a taste of what it actually was like, and not like what we're looking back in the rearview mirror.
Mhm.
You know, like because it's really easy to see what it's like now and be like, oh, okay, blah blah blah. But like really getting into where culture is in that moment of these kind of things is really important to me. And like the only way you can really do it is by getting primary sources who were there and kind of discussing it. Because if you do, I'm a big research guy. If you do enough research, you can kind of get a vibe for it. I don't know if you guys had this in Canada, but do you remember I Love the 80s?
No, I don't know what that one was.
It was a VH1 show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Talking Heads.
Yeah.
Like 1980, here's
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. 1981, here's blah, blah, blah. And they would just go through stuff. And that was like very informative to me when I was growing up, because it was like a fun way to get encyclopedia stuff that
Mhm.
you wouldn't necessarily ingest.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I like having primary sources be able to really give you a periscope into that time period,
Mhm.
as opposed to a lot of, I don't know. There's some documentaries I've seen that have been like, have pushed what culture is now on what it was back then.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's a fair representation of culture.
Yeah, this is a tangent. We're going to wrap up now. But a couple of years ago, HBO had a Woodstock 99 documentary, and Limp Bizkit and a couple of those bands were in there. And they basically drew this line where like the people that attended Woodstock had a lot of white rage, and this is where Trump voters come from. They felt like that was the origin. I'm like, that's a weird leap, especially for like that era and that music.
That's I don't even want to. I have such strong feeling. That's exactly what I was alluding to, dude.
Yeah.
I was like, there are things that will put this onto that, and it's not fair. Because I was living in 1999 for a while, and that documentary came out, and I was like, okay, one, you can see like maybe use TRL and stuff as like a jumping off point, but it's like one of my favorite documentaries because it's so fascinating that they chose to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like have Moby talk about rap music and like give context of rap music going through the thing and whatever, and then racializing it in a weird way, and then talking about grunge for like 5 minutes in this like euphoric way where no parent was ever upset about grunge, and then it's like, oh, it was this beautiful storytellers doing everything they want, and then not even to mention they like grouped new metal into this whole, I mean, I could go on for hours, new metal into this whole thing. Meanwhile, like Rage Against the Machine is new metal, you know, like, right? Like, but they're like the bad new metal. What we're talking about is Limp Bizkit and Kid Rock.
Yeah.
These guys. And they do this thing where they watch Limp Bizkit and everybody going crazy for break stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very dangerous or whatever, for sure. But that's what people went to Woodstock for. And I watch it and I'm like, that looks like it rocks. I understand you have like really sad.
Yeah.
Like, but if I was 19 and I like was into Limp Bizkit, and now they're doing, did you see the video online where people are just doing that now in like Brazil?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just selling out again for 90,000
Limp Bizkit, yeah.
Everybody's going ape.
Mm-hmm. And they're still doing break stuff and all the rearranged and all the classics, right? And people are just losing it.
Yeah, and it's because it's because it rocks. I hate to say it, and I know that it's not cool to like Limp Bizkit, but break stuff does rock.
Mm-hmm.
Faith doesn't hold up that well. Nookie is a nice novelty. I think My Generation and My Way are bad, but break stuff gets to a carnal, primal thing in people that is awesome. And I don't think that because somebody played break stuff in 1999, they sat on it for 17 years and were like, I'm voting for Donald J. Trump.
Yeah,
I was at Woodstock and now I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah.
This is just the natural lineage. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that was like a weird conclusion to the documentary. I was like, you can put a lot of other stuff in there, but I was like, that's a weird jump.
I mean, what's even better, oh my God, I just think, does they bring in Columbine to the documentary?
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
Hey, what about Marilyn Manson and how they all said that was based on Marilyn Manson and all his music? And the people are like, that's ridiculous. Get out of here. What are you talking? Get out. No way. Columbine was barely. But this, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They're all voting specifically Republican because they went to Woodstock 99.
Columbine was really like the breaking of reality. Everything got blamed for Columbine. It was video games and Matrix and Marilyn Manson. Like whatever the evil was that you think are harming children, you just blamed it on Columbine and are like, see, this was the problem.
Yeah. But I will say, at least it was in the moment.
Mhm.
It wasn't looking back 17 years and be like, I'm telling you, this performance up in Rome, New York,
Mhm.
it was crushing us. And now finally,
Yeah.
they didn't vote for Romney, but they voted now. They're into it. And yeah, that stuff, it's all very, very fascinating. And but I truly do love the doc. I watched it 5 or 6 times because it's just so fascinating to do something like that. And then they made another one on Netflix that I watched that I don't go back to ever.
Oh yeah, I know
all
the
the-
next
the-
one. Yeah, I haven't seen the Netflix one. I was just put off after the HBO one. I was like, that's a weird conclusion. So like, you know what I mean? Just the idea of voters humming like break stuff as they vote for like Donald Trump is weird.
Yeah, and it's it felt like there was like 2 people that they really got a lot of good stuff out of, and they were like, all right, let's just do this. Why not? And it sucks because I think Dave Holmes is in that, and he's terrific, and he gives terrific points of view and perspective on it. And Anand is not in it. Wesley Moore's pretty interesting in it. There's like a lot of interesting folks, but there's just some kind of dovetails where you're like, this is the conclusion you guys came up with? How fascinating.
Yeah.
And then like what is it called? They don't even maybe like Metallica plays or whatever, and they don't even play Metallica because Metallica's new metal, but they don't fit the
Mhm.
I don't know. But yeah. It's one of my favorite documentaries. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a sports one. It's I think June 17th, 1994.
Is that the OJ one and the Knicks one? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is like that, and then a documentary called Supermensch done by Michael Myers, which if you haven't seen it, I'm not even giving you like a recommendation. It is a prescription. You
Okay.
have to watch it.
I'll watch that one. I haven't seen that
The guy
one.
is like, he's like the Forrest Gump of show business.
Mhm.
And it is I want you to email me afterwards and be like, hey, you were right. This shit rocks. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Supermensch about Shep Gordon. That really, I love that because of just the Forrest Gump of it, of like how all these interesting things. And there's this one person who was kind of the nucleus of all this stuff. But the June 17th, 1994, that is like unimpeded. There's so few decisions you can make in that wouldn't show you exactly what it was like in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I like just getting back in Periscope right into that moment. And
the behind the scenes footage of like Bob Costas and all those people was fascinating too.
oh yeah, and the guy who did it, I think his name Brett Morgan. I think he's a tremendous director. He's very good. I think he did Kids Stay in the Picture, and then that Kurt Cobain montage of Heck documentary.
I've seen that one.
Very,
Yeah.
very, very good. But that June 17th, it's important to me that you watch something and you see it as it was instead of how it's been processed through 2 decades of culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that we can, that I could do something that's like that. That is archival in nature. Maybe there's still some talking heads or whatever, but something that's really, really encapsulates a moment and gives people an actual taste of the culture instead of like a reminiscing of it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So your documentary is called Troll, New Kids on the Block, Total Request Live, and The Chain Letter That Changed the Internet. We covered all of those aspects from New Kids to Total Request Live to The Chain Letter. So thank you so much for like hanging out. Thank you for the documentary. It's playing at Hot Docs. I'll put the link in, but I can also put the links for the other, because I know you have a couple other film festivals coming up as well. I think Dallas is coming up or did come up or is coming up.
Dallas, we got Dallas is Friday and Saturday, and then Hot Docs is Sunday, and then the following Friday, and then before there's a lot. There's a nice little run we're going to do in the next 2 weeks. Boston as well, which will be a lot of fun at the Somerville Theater. I'm very excited for all these screenings, and I'm hoping I could talk to a lot more folks because I'm very excited about it. I like it's fun to talk to people about it, and I'm not good with compliments. But I really love talking about TRL and pop culture in general.
Yeah, it shows, and that's why I circled it right away when I saw the title. I was like, "Oh, yo, this looks fun," and it is a fun doc, as you said, because like you need a couple of fun ones with all the serious things and political things kind of going on with the other documentaries. So have a fun one in the corner is really nice.
Yeah, and I have a fun one that's not like first person zoinks making the jokes through the voiceover in places where you need to like pay stuff. You know what I mean? Like where people will be first person and they'll start telling jokes in a documentary
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be like, "Oh, isn't that ironic?" or "Brr," you know, all that kind of stuff. And um yeah, I don't know. I'm very very happy. Like all this stuff is very exciting. The hot docs is a very big deal to me. I grew up in Park City, so like film festivals are like was part of my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't get to submit. I finished too late to submit to Sundance, which is a bummer. But
They would have liked that.
just getting to like be part of the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Also being like doing like such a short documentary, like the people that I get to meet are like about that. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of like when you deal with features and stuff, it's all like much more show busy stuff. But when it's shorts, I get to talk to a lot of people about the craft, and people are just much more excitable than people who have been run down by the industry.
Yeah. All right, we can end it there. Slightly sad note, but we can end it there.
Yeah, that's cool. You finished recording?
Woo! That was a lot. I'm Sammy, host of My Summer Lair, and that was Yourgo, director of Troll, New Kids on the Block, Total Request Live, and The Chain Letter That Changed the Internet. Some of the documentaries mentioned at the end or throughout this conversation. He highly recommends Supermensch, The Legend of Shep Gordon. I have not seen this, and dude has given me some good nerd homework. I'll work on that. You can join me on the nerd homework as well. Another one that we talked about is fantastic, June 17, 1994. This is a 30 for 30 documentary on ESPN. It covers Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals between the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks, which unfortunately was happening around a number of other notable sports events, including, remember this? When O.J. Simpson was on a slow speed chase in a white Ford Bronco. Real life sports events were colliding with news. Do you keep the broadcast on the NBA Finals, or do you break away to show the O.J. Simpson chase, which was news and sports at the same time? It was a real surreal conundrum. Man, the things we have seen, yo. And finally, the Woodstock 99 documentary. It's officially called Music Box Woodstock 99, Peace, Love, and Rage. I've written about this documentary for My Pal Sammy, my newsletter. It's like a My Summer Lair companion newsletter. The dispatch for the Woodstock 99 documentary is called A Tasty Newsletter Just for You, if you want to check it out. I also wrote in that same newsletter, A Tasty Newsletter Just for You, not just about Woodstock 99, but also about HBO's Kenny G documentary. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of weird out loud now. I think it made sense. You can go check it out. Tasty Newsletter for You. It's on Substack. For more My Pal Sammy, where I expand on these themes in this conversation, you can sign up at substack.com, My Pal Sammy at Substack. Please sign up. As you can see, we cover Kenny G documentaries, Woodstock 99 documentaries. We'll expand some of this stuff and talk about New Kids on the Block. We'll even talk about the time that there was a 1-900 number to kill Robin, as in Batman and Robin. So I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a kind of an interesting way to mine through some of the pop culture that we've experienced and try to like understand how we got here. Because this is the thing with pop culture, it doesn't come out of a void. There's always a, it's like a subway. There's lots of stops along the way. How did we get here? And this is what's so fascinating about this documentary, Troll by Yourgo. It's another subway stop to explain just how we got here. I always like those subway stops. You know what I mean? Because nothing comes out of a void. So please sign up, My Pal Sammy at Substack. You can Google that. I am also at mysummerlair.com/subscribe. You can also sign up there as well. Thank you so much for listening to me in the Netflix world. New Kids on the Block, yo.